Hey, fellow Thames Valley coaches. Thanks for giving me a few minutes of your time at the end of this coaches meeting today. I know it's been a long one. We talked about a bunch. It's been a long day at school. We're looking forward to getting home to our families. But I think this is a very important topic or conversation to have with you all, especially in the position that we hold as coaches of teenagers. So I'm sure we've all heard of heterosexism, or the viewpoint that heterosexuality is the superior and correct way to live, discriminating against others based on this belief. It's nothing new, this whole kind of homophobia. Whenever we kind of talked about it, to be honest, I always zoned out, even though I know that's wrong. I felt like it didn't apply to me, so why have to listen? But recently, I was introduced to a new term called heteronormativity, or the subtle, often unintentional things that we do to further marginalize gender, sexual, romantic minorities. And this is where it really started hitting home to me. I made a lot of personal connections to this term. So just to kind of get more into it, because it's probably new to a lot of you. Heteronormativity is the viewpoint that heterosexuality is the norm or default sexual orientation. Or in other words, I guess you can put it, that biological sex, sexuality, gender identity, and gender roles should all align in an individual. So if you're born a female, your sex should be female, your gender should be female, you should be straight or like attracted to men, and you should fill the more feminine gender role that our society is kind of dictated as normal. Since this is kind of a very overview or broad topic, it can manifest itself in society in many ways. From what we value, particularly in a man and in a woman, the language we use when talking to people, the media we take in, from books to movies to music, how we carry ourselves in public, the presumptions we hold of other people, etc. Right? There's many ways that this can show up in public. To give you an example, a more specific example, when you see a young boy dressed all handsome in his little suit, you go, "Oh, you're going to be a real lady killer when you're older." Or when you see somebody have a messy shirt or something like that, you go, "That's not going to be able to happen when you're older and married to a woman. She'll be taking care of you," right? Imagine how that makes people feel who that storyline doesn't match up with what they feel. They don't want to grow up and marry a woman. So that when you say things like that, even though unintentional and not fueled by hate, it makes them feel like what they want to do is wrong, if that makes sense to you. That's what heteronormativity is. So when I first was introduced to this topic, I really started to reflect on it in my life and the way that it manifests itself within me. I just wanted to share a few examples I came up with you. So say I'm hanging out with other men, especially ones that I don't know that well. I'm always very conscious to sit on a different couch than them or order a manly drink at the bar, not say anything too soft. I find myself often judging men who would choose to drink a glass of wine over a beer or whiskey, or if they'd rather watch a season premiere of, say, This Is Us, or read a comic book than watch the Super Bowl. I have no problem with any of these things. I have friends who like comic books over sports. I have friends who are gay. So why do I always checking these things, checking myself to make sure that I come off as a manly, masculine man? Why? Why is that, right? This is what heteronormativity is. It's the viewpoints and the things that we do without even thinking about it. And this has really, really got me thinking about myself and why I do and think the things that I do and think. And what I came back to is my very intensive sports background as a kid. So growing up, I was surrounded pretty much year-round into a sporting environment, playing basketball, baseball, football, everything you could think of, right? I was always playing sports as a kid. And now that I'm thinking more about it, I was often surrounded by hyper-masculine boys, coaches, family, and role models. Every man that I saw played sports, had a wife, didn't cry, was aggressive, right? Swore a little bit, could grow a nice beard. I learned to believe that to be a man, you had to do and say certain things. And if you didn't fall into those categories, you weren't a real man. I believe growing up in this hyper-masculine, athletic environment is a big reason that I hold a lot of the viewpoints that I do. I still find myself saying gay, pussy, bitch as derogatory terms to my friends or to things. Why is that? I don't know. I grew up saying them. I know now that it's wrong, but why do I still say it? I don't really think about it. I just do those things, right? And these are things that I want to talk about with you as coaches, so that when you see it come up in your practices or in your games or in your tournaments with the team, you know how to address it properly and you understand that it's wrong what they're doing. Just kind of even more examples here. I've had the opportunity, as I said, to be involved in sports, but recently, over the past few years, to coach them as well, from high school basketball teams to Little League baseball. And something that I've noticed that hasn't changed from when I was a kid is that the number one insult that one boy calls another is "you're gay, you're a bitch, you're a fag, you're a pussy," right? And all these words pretty much mean the same thing. You're a feminine boy. You're not masculine. You're not doing what a boy should do. You're being soft. You're not being tough. You're crying. You're showing your emotions. These are what you're basically saying. You're ridiculing a boy for not being what we deem masculine enough. And I believe the athletic environments that we create often are a proponent of these attitudes and behaviors. We value masculine traits and kind of devalue feminine traits in the athletic sphere. And I think that's probably wrong, and we have to address that as a coach. So kind of just, I talked about what heteronormativity is. I talked about what it looks like in society. I talked about how I believe sports and the hypermasculine environments that I have been brought up in are a big reason that I hold the viewpoints of masculinity and femininity that I do hold. And I believe that through coaching and what I've seen is that these conversations still take place and these boys still kind of share these same attitudes that I learned to share when I was playing sports as a kid. So I believe that we as coaches have a very, very unique opportunity to teach these kids and get to know them outside the traditional classroom setting. I'm sure you've noticed this too, but as a teacher, you get to really learn about kids and get to know them. But as a coach, it's so much different. It's a way more personal level outside of school. You get to see them be their true selves, and they come to respect you in a different way than they would as a classic teacher. And I believe it's our responsibility to use this position that we have with these students to address these issues when we see them arise, and to do it so efficiently in order to create a generation of more understanding and insightful young men. I never got an opportunity to talk about these things when I was playing sports as a kid and really kind of reflect on why I am the way I am. But doing so now, I learned a lot about myself, and I wish I could have done that with a role model helping guide my thoughts when I was playing sports and surrounded in these hypermasculine environments. That's why I want to talk to you today. So you could recognize this heteronormativity that often comes out of these hypermasculine athletic environments that we create. And that maybe if we can take away some of this hypermasculinity that does exist in these environments, that maybe we can nurture a generation of more understanding and insightful young men. And that will lead to more inclusion and overall tolerance of gender, sexual, romantic minorities, and make them feel that what they are is right, and that their identity is true to themselves, and they shouldn't be tormented or ridiculed or bullied based on those things. Thank you. Hope you learned a lot. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, or I'll be waiting by the door on the way out after the meeting. Appreciate your time. Have a good one.